All right, guys. So today I want to talk about the Warlock tank. Now, this guy is someone that I think a lot of people may be sleeping on. He has a ton of utility. He's got blinds. He's got roots. He's got weakness. He's got reduction of health by 20% to a single target, as well as he has the ability to strip glory as well as dark ritual and perform the killing blow on those 1 HP units. He also has the ability to teleport himself and teleport others. And on top of that, he has 6 lives, assuming you have a healer or a cleric that has redemption. And that would actually be 5 without that, right? But that being said, this guy is a monster. Not only that, guys, he can do upwards to 70% of a target's HP. Now, what I mean by that is if you're able to get him low enough in HP, you can use Soul Exchange and completely obliterate a large HP monster and or boss. So say, for instance, a monster has 1,000,000 HP or a boss. You are able to do a 700,000 damage, and it's not even damage. It just takes it away. So there's no way for them to mitigate that, which is even crazier, right? You're able to do 70% of that target's health in damage. And you can also target him early on if you wanted to and lower his health. But you have to be careful, right? Because where I am currently in the game, a lot of my guys will one-shot my unit. So I have to be very careful if I'm relying on that. Or I can let the old-fashioned monsters beat them up and stuff like that. Now, another cool thing is, guys, with this character, we have the ability to teleport. We have the Oculus Stone, which is, in my opinion, going to be the best weapon for this build. I'll give examples of others that are okay as well. But this one is going to be the best because it's going to allow you to teleport as close as possible to enemy mobs. And then this guy should, in theory, absorb as much damage as possible. Now, another thing you guys are probably thinking is, well, how is he a tank? You know, he's not really wearing any gear that makes him tanky. Well, with the ability called Child of the Abyss, we actually get a flat 50% damage reduction. So we are focusing mainly on getting as much HP as possible so that the enemies can get us as low as possible so we can utilize his big damage skill or his life swap, right? So let's go ahead and go through the skills and tell you guys how we use them generally in order and what they're used for and what you should expect to use them for if you're playing with this class. So first off, guys, we start with Rally, which is going to be the ability that allows everyone on our team, including the Warlock, to move 2 spaces further. Now, this helps with being able to move barrels and stuff further and closer to enemies that we want to do maximum damage to. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is Teleport Self. This comes from our Oculus staff. Now, this is the bread and butter of getting him in as close as possible to the enemies that you want to be damaging him. Not only that, guys, we have a Soul Link, which this helps position us better so that we can Soul Link multiple units initially at the start of battle, and this is going to give us more damage on targets, especially with your AoE builds or your single target, damage dealers. They're going to be able to do pure damage to a certain target. Now, the reason Soul Link is important is because it lets you get around evasive, as well as it helps you get around Child of the Abyss, which is what we are rocking. But you can use this on boss monsters that have Child of the Abyss or Mana Shield, and it's going to allow you to deal damage through that Mana Shield, because this damage from the Soul Link, it ignores any type of shields or any type of damage mitigation. It's pretty nutty. It's pretty cool. The Soul Link is a very not overpowered, but a very strong ability that a lot of people probably don't really understand how to utilize, right? Now, we've recently added Escape. This is just another teleport in case monsters run past our character. We can now chase them. Or try to. We try to get their attention, right? Because there are no taunts currently in the game. We are not able to taunt monsters, so we have to hopefully through RNG and enough being close enough to these guys, get their attention to attack our Warlock, right? And then we also have Light's Beacon, which is going to be utilized to bring units closer to us. So say a unit is just all the way in the back and they're not able to do anything. Well, this allows us to target that unit and get them further up and closer to us. Pretty cool. This is actually a really nice ability for this build. I'm actually enjoying using it. The other cool thing about this build, and as I said, we have tons of utility, is that we can curse something. Now, this is all resistances. This is your physical, fire, cold, lightning, everything gets reduced by 25%. This is going to help out in the very beginning of the battle when you're wanting to deal the most damage to kill and or destroy as many people as possible. This is going to help you kill at least 1 or 2 targets, assuming you're soul linking someone in the very beginning, right? Now, here's another cool thing that a lot of people don't realize, and the utility this guy brings is spectral chains as well as a blind. Now, these cost 0 AP. Now, we'll touch more into why the 0 AP is really good for this build later on, but blinding plus spectral chains on a boss that does a massive high damage AoE is basically going to shut him down for a whole turn, assuming that they all land and there's no special like things that prevent him from being blinded. These abilities are going to keep that monster from doing any damage for 1 turn. Pretty crazy, right? Now, we already went over Soul Link. Let's talk about Soul Fracture. So, when you Soul Fracture, now you don't want to use Soul Fracture early on, right? You want to wait. Well, depending, right? So you can use Soul Fracture early on. What Soul Fracture does is it takes 20% of their health and 20% of their mana. This is technically a 20% damage spell, right? Unlike the cold side where every shard will basically lower their health 5%, this is a 20% damage to their health, basically. So every time you use this, it's taking 20% of their 20% of their health and their mana, and even when they get that back after 3 turns, it does not regenerate that health. That health is gone. It's not coming back. Pretty cool. All right, guys. So the reason we are waiting to use Soul Fracture is because it's going to do an additional 20% damage on top of the 70% damage that we're hoping to achieve with our Soul Exchange. Now, this Soul Exchange, and once you guys see this, the footage, you're going to be like, wow, you're right. That is so crazy. It's so good. And watch, I'm telling you guys, you're going to be like, wow, that's so crazy. Because this ability basically allows you to kill boss mobs within the first 2 to 3 turns, assuming you have the damage on your main characters. We also bring more utility with Exorcism. So this is the ability that's going to get rid of those guys that have Dark Ritual, as well as Glory, which is another ability that keeps a person at 1 health. If they don't have any other buffs, you have a very high chance, or if they have just those buffs on them, Exorcism's going to basically one-shot them because they're going to be at 1 HP for the most part when that procs. And if they're not at 1 HP when Dark Ritual's around, it's going to free up the ability for you to kill them with your damage dealers. So he brings a ton of utility. Also, an extra blind for later on if you need to blind a pesky range character that's going to be dealing massive amounts of damage to your units. Now, one thing with this build, guys, is because we go straight into Vitality, you will need to use mana potions in order to stay afloat as the fight progresses on. And that's realistically not a big deal. If you really think about it, it's not a huge deal at all. Mana is not really a big problem. It's not a big problem at all because it's really only going to cost you 2k gold every now and then to refill your mana for this ability, like for this build. And this purge mana brings you back not much. I mean, 20% is like 200, 130, 140, whatever your current mana is at. It's 20% of that. It's going to buy you a little extra time before you need to use a mana potion. So realistically, I don't ever usually need to run any mana potions, maybe more than twice per run. So with that being said, guys, I wouldn't stress it. It's only like 2 to 4k gold per run, right? It's not a lot. Another thing that's nice is we run a haste ring, guys. And the reason we run haste ring is That extra AP can be used to buff a character, whether it's a single target damage dealer, or this character, maybe we need to do another blind for the turn instead of just one blind. Maybe we need to do 2 blinds first turn. This is going to help you determine what's the safest option for keeping your units alive. Right now, we also spec into stuff that is going to help our other units. Now, Ghost Armor is not for us. It's for our squishy damage dealers. It's to buy them another hit that turn. Or we're giving them elemental protection to reduce damage to them. And we're also having another Purify effect, which is going to help them, alleviate that poison that's on them. Or maybe they're frozen and we need to use them that turn. This is going to be that bread and butter for helping keep them in the fight, to keep them doing damage. As you guys can see, this build is very strong. So now let's go ahead and get a overview of where we put all our points. Now, Ghost Armor, Blind, Spectral Chains, we're going Curse, Purge Mana, Soul Fracture. You honestly don't really need Vengeful Shadows. We may take this out later on when we find a different item that may be more beneficial. As of right now, some damage back to the enemies is better than no damage. This paired up with the Abyssal Shield, we're doing 35% damage return, which, as far as I've seen, is close to 600 to 900 damage per hit when most mobs hit us, which isn't bad. If they're hitting us for 1,000 or 2,000 damage, they're taking a little bit of damage. At the higher tiers, that's no damage at all, to be fair with you guys. But it's better than nothing, right? So... Now we also have Dark Ritual, we go into Exorcism, Soul Link, and then the bread and butter of Soul Exchange, as well as Immortal Knights, and Child of the Abyss. Now Child of the Abyss is the reason we can focus purely on HP instead of anything else, right? Because this is giving us a flat 50% damage reduction. So 50% is the cap on damage reduction mods that you can have. So you can't go into the adamant armor and get more damage reduction. You can't go into the jewelry and get more damage reduction. 50% is the flat. Now you could go and maybe spec into elemental resist if you wanted to have a little bit more survivability. But for me, guys, I'm going to be focusing HP currently and see what we're lacking once we get to that tier 3 grind, right? And then we'll update you guys in another video. Now, the Immortal Knights, guys, this is really good because it's actually going to allow you to revive 3 times with max HP. So you're allowed to basically tank longer and longer and longer. And the cool thing about this is as long as you're surviving long enough to use Soul Exchange again, you may be able to hit someone else for a big 70% nuke or be able to reduce them down to 30% HP. At the end of the day, that's what this skill is for. It is for basically taking out big targets. And the video clip we're showing you guys, we didn't have Thief in there, but this is a skill that we're actually adding in because it's going to give us more utility, more ability to teleport closer to the enemies and get their attention as opposed of having their attention on our damage dealers. We want as much RNG as possible in teleporting and getting damage on this character instead of our damage dealers because there are no taunts currently in the game, right? And we talked about Rally. This is one of the other skill points that we put in here. As well as we're going to talk about Light. So we go 1 point Blessed and then 1 point Elemental. This is for our friendlies. But on top of that, guys, we've got 25% mana cost reduction. Remember, we don't spec anything into intelligence outside of the Oculus Stone and, yeah, just base natural mana. We don't need any more mana than that. Right? We're trying to be as tanky as possible because we want to take as many hits and get as low as possible without dying, right? So on top of that, guys, we spec into Glory. We're also getting a 20% vitality increase through Light's Endurance. We're also going into Light's Beckon, which is helping move those turtle units to the front lines or moving them near a barrel so they can throw that barrel further so that we can do more damage. Lots of utility. Lots and lots of utility. And then we also have Blinding Light. Blinding Light's insane. It's a 0 AP cost as well. Then we have Purify. Purify is another really cool one. Purify removes all negative statuses from the target. We're going to go ahead and show you a clip of what it looks like to fight shock bosses and how you can utilize the shock boss or mobs to help your actual Warlock tank destroy the enemy quicker. Now, as you guys can see here, we have 2 shock mobs. One's the boss. This is good. So we walk into the shock. And the other's a regular unit. Our champion. So we're casting spells to lower our life. And what this is going to do is eventually we're going to be able to, hopefully, get him to the lowest possible health that we can get him to with the Soul Link. We messed up, boys. Or did we? Look at that. Perfect. Great. Great, great, great. That makes this so much easier. So the Necromancer for the Warlock tank is actually not a bad unit after all, as you guys can see. We're able to do so much damage with very little effort, although it's got a long cooldown to do it again. What do we move here? Yes, okay, good. I'm so dumb. I messed up already. We wanted to do this real quick. We're going to soul exchange, take half of his health. Nice. Let's take 20% of his mana. Nice. No, his health is so low. Whoa, that was a big crit. Let's freaking go, dudes. So right here, guys, all the mobs are really, really far away. So we're opting for a turn 2 approach. Let the mobs knock us down. So we skipped all the buffing for you guys. We're going to show you kind of the standard rotation. So we're going to Soul Link. We're going to blind and root him. Purge his mana. We hit him for almost like 300 something plus K. Pretty crazy. We're going to take another turn. We're going to Soul Fracture. But he was at 147K. Let's see what he's at after that. We're going to teleport somebody, aka our Warlock, our single target damage dealer, to an area where he gets benefits from both our Enchanter and this rune. Or aura, I mean. Stacking crit damage stacks. Now we're going to do some frost damage. This is going to slow their movement down. See, he's already at 90k HP. Pretty crazy. Slow down their movement a little more. All right. We don't need to cast anything else, it looks like, at the moment for this guy. So see, he has Abyssal on. He's taking
that's right. He takes half the damage.
The damage that we normally do. So we misplayed. This goes to show you that everybody makes mistakes, and as long as you're learning from them, you will grow. So we're going to commit. We're going to keep hitting him. Then you guys are going to see that if we would have went for the other guy, it would have been pure damage. So right here, for instance,
again as well, if they don't die.
All of that is pure damage. All the white stuff is pure damage. Now, instead of targeting him, we target the other mob. It's going to do 12k pure damage. So if we would have done that from the get-go, he would have died way sooner. And there he goes.
Awesome.
Easy. Perfect. All right, guys, so let's talk about best in slot weapons. So the Oculus Stone for me currently is going to be best in slot with what I have, and maybe even in game. But these three weapons that we're going to show you are going to be best in slot any way that you see it, because they're going to do one of many of the main features that we're looking for, which is provide vitality, max HP, or grant us a skill that is going to allow us to teleport, right? So the Oculus Stone is a very good weapon because it does give teleport self. And this is a very long-range teleport. So you can teleport a very far distance with this ability, which will give you the options to soul link and do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do, because you'll be able to move so much, right? And you'll also be able to teleport people to different areas of the battlefield that they wouldn't be able to get to normally. Kind of cool. Now, honorable mentions are going to be the Spectre of the Dwarven Lords. This thing has pretty high base vitality, which means you're going to get a lot of vitality out of this weapon in general. Also, it's going to give more damage to your reflect abilities. So this is also an honorable mention, especially since we spec into Escape in the Thief skills. This still means that you can still teleport with Escape and still use this if you would like to have more health, right? And more damage for your reflex. Not only that, guys, we have the Life Rune Hatchet. At later tiers, this may be viable to use because you're going to get more percentages stacked onto this weapon. So the max health percentage may outshine both of those other specters and or wand. Keep in mind that this will not outshine those other specters until we get a higher tier variant of this hatchet. So let's go ahead and move on to best in slot helmets. Best in slot helmets are going to be your Plague Mask, your Bladed Great Helm, and the Bladed Helm, as well as the Shako. These four helmets are all going to be very good. Now, the Plague Mask is only good right now because it's giving us a lot of HP. And in the current area that we're at, monsters aren't one-shotting us yet. So, a Tier 1 Plague Mask is actually helping us to sustain life in our current playthroughs. Now, later on, we will most likely be moving on to... the Bladed Great Helm, because the Bladed Great Helm is actually going to give might and vitality, and it's going to give physical damage return, which is going to be solid for that extra damage that we're going to get over time. Now, another honorable mention is the Shaco. The Shaco actually may be best in slot overall because of all the stats it gives. Not only that, at higher tiers, you're going to get higher health percentages, mana percentages, and damage percentages. So that means you're going to be dealing more damage on reflex, as well as just overall, just max of everything just gets increased, which is awesome. The damage reduction, unfortunately, will not provide anything because we already have max damage reduction. So unfortunately, that is a lost stat. But overall, this is one of the better helmets. The hard part with farming this helmet is that we have to have on par weapons for the level of monsters that we're fighting. And at this current playthrough, I do not have the means to be able to farm because my damage is just not significant enough to fight these dragons. Now, moving on to chest pieces. The best in slot chest piece that we're currently wearing and is working really well for level 50 to level 60 is our plug jacket, and it gives 40 vitality at our current level, which is pretty good. Now, we're not relying on the poison stacks at all, guys. It's just as a stat stick for this character currently. Next one that we would look at, which is a global drop, is going to be your Curus of the Iron Thorns. If this wasn't a global drop, this would be best in slot, just because of the return physical damage, the base vitality of 3, and then we're getting 2 to the might. Pretty solid. But if you're looking for a possible easy to find, replacement for either of these two, the Godfather drops a bladed mail, which gives vitality and return physical damage, which is not bad. Not bad at all. Best in slot amulets. There's going to be one that's best in slot, and that is going to be the Bestowing Razor Wire. This is a global loot drop, but as you can see, it gives armor, magic armor, vitality, and physical return damage. And we can still add something else to it if we wanted to via crafting. So this is going to be your best in slot for amulets, as well as there's an honorable mention to be your Mithril Pendant, which is also global loot, which is going to be a stand-in until you can get a nice razor wire, right? This one also will give armor as well as vitality. Now, best in slot for rings is hands down going to be the Ring of Haste. Now, we say the Ring of Haste because you just can't beat having the ability to give someone a free turn. There's hands down no benefit for this build other than that. And this is also going to allow us to, if we make a mistake in the beginning of the round, this can be that fixer of that mistake. Say we accidentally cast something we didn't mean to cast. This will give us another action point just in case to fix that problem. All right, guys, so let's talk about your best in slot shield. Now, your best in slot shield is going to be the Abyssal Shield. Reason for that is it's going to give a decent amount of vitality as well as return shadow damage. Return shadow damage just gives extra damage over time. Now, originally I would have said that the Crimson Guard would have been the best in slot, but after reviewing the Crimson Guard that we had on one of our characters, it looks like the Crimson Guard no longer gives vitality or return shadow damage of 20%. So that makes this not so good for our build because honestly, we'd rather have vitality because we aren't going heavy into the armor spectrum, right? We are trying to take damage and we're trying to dish damage out after we take enough damage to do so, right? And this shield is just pure armor and just physical damage return. So that doesn't help us with our current build. Now, the other honorable mention would be a bolstered or a thorn shield. However, if we look at the thorn shield in comparison to the abyssal shield, or even if we were to go with this abyssal shield, this one gets 21 vitality even as a non-tier item, whereas this one only gives 18. So we can assume that a tier 1 of the thorn shield is going to give less vitality than a tier 1 of the Abyssal Shield. So with that being said, guys, I do think that the Abyssal Shield is going to be your best in slot for Vitality for this build. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And with that being said, guys, this ends our video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with friends if they're interested in maybe playing a Warlock tank as well. And yeah, just let me know what you guys think overall. We'll catch you guys in the next one.